what really gets in the way for a lot of people and a lot of CEOs is their own programming, which they're not aware of. So the conditioning that we all fall under as human beings. And sometimes we don't even, not sometimes, most of the time, we're not even aware what's there in the unconscious. And so we stumble, we reach to a point where either we stumble or we fall or we stop. We're stopped. So we reach to a certain point and we stop. So I think that that's the biggest chunk of it. It's really the unawareness of what's there in the unconscious that really has people become limited or hit a wall, so to speak. And so it's really about, making people aware or bringing them to distinguish certain things that are in the way, but they're not even available, not even evident for them to even see. So I think that that's a big one.
Welcome back to the Top Left podcast, where we host conversations about agile, lean leadership in the MSP space, but a lot of value beyond as well. And so I'm your host, Wim Kerkhoff, the founder of Top Left. And today I have a special guest. I'm very privileged and excited to have on one of my coaches, Francesco. So welcome, Francesco.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Francesco is...
Pleased to be here.
Yeah. Is a psychologist. We've been working together for several years and it's been very impactful in my life and businesses. So looking forward to a conversation with him and helping all of you as well. So again, welcome.
Thank you. It's great.
Yeah. Well,
great to be here.
Kick this off, I guess. Is who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Francesco de Gaetano, and I've been coaching for the last 35 years. I had a private practice for about 30 of those years. I've also, been doing training and development in corporations. That's when I first started in the realm of coaching. I'd go into corporations and reinvent their cultures. So I worked with, top level management and CEOs and went in there with top level management and building team and reinventing culture so that, to really bring out the effectiveness and the efficiency of team and how that had an effect on the overall corporation or company. So that's what I've been doing. And I've been doing that for the last 35 years. And I love what I do. And I love coaching. So for me, it is kind of like, for my personal feeling about it is that it's the greatest fulfillment that I could achieve in as far as the work that I do. So, yeah.
So I guess let's rewind. Start at the beginning, right? Like, how did you get into private practice? Is this like you're at grade 4 and you're like, when they ask, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? Firefighter or nurse or whatever. And you're like, I'm going to be a shrink, a psychologist. How did that evolve for you?
It didn't evolve that way. It wasn't something that I consciously, decided on when I was a kid. It just evolved over time. And I guess when I was in college is when it really started to kick off for me. When I started, I guess it was in my first or second year of college that I said, okay, I'm not really quite sure what I wanted to do with my life and exactly what it was that I wanted to be. And so I had the opportunity of looking into psychology. Some of it was interesting to me, some of it wasn't. And then I got into this book that talked about humanistic psychology and the human potential movement. Actually, that's really what did it for me. And understanding the potential of human being is the thing that really pulled my attention. And I said, okay, that's where I want to, have an impact in, is exploring the human potential. And what is human potential? Human potential is really about not what we know about ourselves, not what we actually get programmed with from childhood or anything like that, but to explore the options of what's possible. Mm-hmm. And so that really pulled me in, and I said, okay, that's kind of where I want to focus in. And so that's what pulled me in. And then from there had me lead into doing my degree and my master's in psychology.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of redirected your course a little bit once you got through your first or second year and then.
Yeah. I was doing basically fine arts, or not fine arts, but just the whole scope of arts, and not really when you're starting out in college, you're not really sure. So you always take philosophy courses and arts
Yep.
and sociology and all that stuff. So you just kind of getting your bearings of what it is that fits. And so I wasn't quite sure. And then that book that I read on the human potential movement is what did it, and then there was so many other things that I read, and I read stuff on Gestalt and the NLP. And so there was so many things that pulled it all together for me. And then I said, okay, so this is what I like to be doing and where I want to go with it. Yeah.
So then you had your private practice, and then what was the tipping point where you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, but really focus on the coaching and the corporate training and such? What kind of got you down that road?
Well, I had a private practice for quite a while. And then I think in the last 5 years, I decided, that's it. I just want to focus on just doing a coaching, because I was doing both. And it was at one point, it was like, okay, do I want to just do coaching? Because it was getting more difficult to do both. So I said, okay, my devotion to coaching is a lot more interesting to me. And so I decided that's what I wanted to do, is just focus on the coaching. And they're close in a way because, one bleeds into the other, given who I am and all my background. So you can't really separate the two, because a human being, there's just so much that makes up a human being, right? There's just so much. And all of our psychology, all of our emotional states, all of our, unconscious things, they're all part and parcel. And so I think my background lends itself very well into the world of coaching, and helping people do that. And I think a lot of my experience as well, given the fact that I was doing, training and development in corporations, I have such a strong business background because of all my work in corporations and understanding and working with businesses, working with strategies in business and what had them, function, not function, just doing needs analysis in enterprises and looking at what broke things down and what made them work and what didn't make them work, and having that understanding. I think that I bring that to the table, which is, very beneficial to all my clients. And I fundamentally believe as well that, the world needs really good leaders, really good CEOs. And for me, I find that it's a privilege to be able to support that, to support the building and, just kind of getting CEOs to be the best that they could possibly be as humans and as leaders and as business people, so that we have integrity in the world rather than, a world that's not integrous. And so, for me, having an impact there with leaders and making them the best that they can be with integrity, I think for me is a huge thing. I have a passion for that. I enjoy making a difference there. I enjoy what I bring to the table there. And, it's very multifaceted. So, yeah, that's really, that's my joy. That's my my thing.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah. So obviously you work with, I guess, hundreds, maybe thousands of CEOs. What are the big things that get in their way? What holds them back from their potential and being the best CEOs they could be?
There's a lot of things, but I think if I really would be able to boil it down, a lot of it has to do with what really gets in the way for a lot of people and a lot of CEOs is their own programming, which they're not aware of. So the conditioning that we all fall under as human beings. And sometimes we don't even, not sometimes, most of the time, we're not even aware what's there in the unconscious. And so we stumble, we reach to a point where either we stumble or we fall or we stop. We're stopped. So we reach to a certain point and we stop. So I think that that's the biggest chunk of it. It's really the unawareness of what's there in the unconscious that really has people become limited or hit a wall, so to speak. And so it's really about, making people aware or bringing them to distinguish certain things that are in the way, but they're not even available, not even evident for them to even see. So I think that that's a big one. Inside of that, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that could be emotional, that could be related to a whole bunch of other things, upbringing, issues with parents, and there's all that stuff. you know. And I think a lot of it has to do as well with, are we operating out of making a difference? So some people are not even aware that, their business is really about making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So most people get locked into this thing about, I'm in business for me. But are you really? Yeah, you're a part of the formula, but you're not in business just for you, because what you're doing is not just for you, because it involves a whole bunch of people. So your employees are part of it. So it's not just for you. Is it to satisfy your ego? Not necessarily. So where people stop and really get into trouble is if they're just satisfying their ego, then something happens, something fails. So it's really having a rounded, full picture of who you are and what you're doing. So it involves others, it involves the world, because your offerings is offered to the world, whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're building widgets or not, or it's technology, whatever it is, it's beyond you. You're offering it to the world, but you're also involving employees to do that. So it's really a relationship that involves so many things, right?
Exactly, yeah. So this concept of integrity,
Yes.
I think that's worth drilling into, because people think, well, honesty and being ethical and moral. But what do you mean by that, integrity, and leaders not having integrity or missing something?
Yeah, a very, very good question. So integrity in my world is really about who you are as a human being. And are you as a human being your word? So that's one of the pillars of integrity. Do you do what you say? And do you mean what you say? And then are you integrous with your own word? That implies so many things, right? So it has to do with, I'm not only going to say something and not mean it. I'm not going to say something so that my employees, I have to walk the talk. So part of integrity is that. The other thing is, am I whole and complete in what my beliefs? Do I feel whole? Am I a whole person? And what I mean by that is, am I whole in the sense of that, when I do say something and then don't do it, do I turn around and acknowledge it? So acknowledgement is another part of integrity. So to acknowledge where you missed out, where you actually fell short on delivering what you said you were going to do, and acknowledging other people for the things that they did do and acknowledging things that they didn't do. So it's always in conversation. So integrity has a lot to do with all of that. So acknowledgement, being your word, and being whole and complete for yourself, and being whole and complete with others, as you would like to be, or as you would need to be, or as effective that would get you to be.
So how might that show up? That's accurate and that's useful. Obviously, we talk about these things all the time.
Right.
But what are some common situations where they're completely blind to some aspect of their character and how they're showing up in the wake they leave behind them? What do you see often that impacts their team? It just holds a company back. Like, they might be profitable and might be doing okay, but that holds them back from their real potential.
It does. I mean, that really is. So what you're asking and what you're saying is really, most people don't notice how it holds them back. So they're not really realizing the full potential. They're not really realizing not only their own full potential, but their employees' full potential. Because if someone walks the talk and acknowledges individuals and acknowledges what works and what doesn't work, and then is willing to have a conversation with others in dissecting what might not be working, not in a way that is blaming another individual, but more in a way of like discovering. Let's have an inquiry let's inquire into what's not really working, because I have the capacity of acknowledging and inquiring into me, what's not really working for me, because I want to be integrous with me. So I need to have that inquiry with me. Then I bring that into the workplace in my relationship with others. And so that expands the opportunity and expands the possibility to have conversations that actually allow things to grow and grow out of the status quo, grow out of like how we normally do things. And because most people are not willing to actually have conversations. And not having conversations and not having, communication prevents things from expanding, or prevents things from actually really truly happening, because we limit ourselves. And it's not about, so limitation is a big issue. So limitation is what causes things to progress to a certain point, but then we're not really going the full way. and what's possible for us. Okay, we could be satisfied of making maybe 20 million, but maybe our potential is to make 100 million. And even though we said that I'm happy with 20 million, yeah, but so you said you'd be happy there making 20, but your potential is making 100. And so you're not really realizing your full potential. And somewhere, somehow, you might even know that as a human being, but not even, somewhere in the recesses of your mind, you might know that that's possible and you don't want to go there. And imagine if you did, what would that cause internally in your environment, in your work environment? And what would the employees do and how would they be? And, what you would cause in the world by going from 20 to 100. How many more people you would employ, how much more of a difference you'd make with having more employees and, and the expansion of what you do, how much that would reach further into the world. And if you believe in what you're doing, then that would have a huge impact in the world, right? A greater impact, right? Yeah. So it's really, you create an interesting dynamic in life that goes beyond yourself. And that's the thing about being a CEO. See, the whole thing about being a CEO is that you get beyond yourself. Because yourself and as you view yourself is pretty limiting. And the CEO position is really about an unlimited potential. It's the capacity to go beyond even your dreams,
Yeah, I've had conversations with individuals, CEOs, presidents recently, and they're putting in these limits of, okay, grow, they have the nice trajectory, grow over 3 years or 5 years. But I can see that they're putting artificial limits on it based on what they think is possible and what's realistic. Right. I want to challenge them on that. Like, hey, you could do 10x in that same amount of time instead of 3. They're like, yeah, but why? Like, I'd be happy and it's in control. And why go faster and have it fall apart? But again, it's all limitations and excuses, roadblocks they put up.
Exactly. And it plays into a lot of people's fears. So people don't want to break through their fears because most individuals design a life for themselves where they stay in the comfort zone. Very few go beyond the comfort zone. And it's where, when we get uncomfortable, that's where the magic is, and if you look at a lot of star athletes, they go beyond their comfort zone to make it. I mean, you yourself know, right? You ran the marathon. So, how uncomfortable did you have to get to run the marathon, right? It's not a place of comfort. There's times where you're probably even asking yourself, what am I doing here? When your legs start burning or whatever pains you feel, right? So, and CEOs have to ask themselves that question: what difference am I making in the world that's beyond me? So it's really about, being clear of the difference that we want to make. So it's not just money. Money is part of it. Yeah, it does. There's a compensation to being uncomfortable, but there's a compensation also to making a difference. There's a compensation about being responsible for having a huge environment where you have, and what I mean by huge is you could have like maybe 20 employees, 30 employees, 50, 100 employees. So that environment where it allows people to benefit from what you've set up. And then they have a job that, they're taking care of their families because of the job. So there's just so much involved. So you're making a difference by providing that environment. And then you're making a difference that goes beyond the employees into the world of what services or products you provide. And so the bigger that goes, the better and the bigger the difference you make as a human being. So, it does start from you as the CEO because you're the generative force that's coming from, right? And the more you recognize that you're the generative force, the more you're generating from that point of making a difference, then everyone you interact with in your environment will understand that, will get that, because you're making a difference because you're the generative force and you want to generate with your employees that which I was talking about before: acknowledgement, integrity, all those aspects, they all fall in line, and you're making a difference with them and they make a difference with whom they come in contact with, whether it's your clients or whatever else, or product that they're making or service that they're providing. So so that has an impact in the world. It's like a ripple effect, right? So we got to recognize that as CEOs, we're actually the ones that are throwing the pebble in the lake, and that pebble is making the waves, right? That's impacting that wave. So that's exactly who we are. And, I find myself as a coach, when I'm coaching CEOs, that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of instigating throwing that rock to create that ripple effect, right? That makes that, that propagate further out, that relationship to me is invaluable. It's like, there's no value to it for me. It's like, it's huge. And
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking now as you're sharing that is across my companies and how much of the work we do really makes a difference in the lives of my team or our clients and their end users and the ripple effect beyond that. It's like a smaller percentage. It's like maybe 10% or 5% of what we do. So if I can, as CEOs, we need to be impacting that to expand that and reduce the stuff that's not really making a difference. That's low value.
Exactly.
That's the multiplier effect.
Exactly. Yeah. And it starts with us recognizing that we generate that. We're the generators of that. And it starts with us being clear about, let me inquire into how I relate. Let me inquire in how I be with others. What am I not impacting? Let me inquire and acknowledge it for myself and say, okay, I noticed this about me. So how do I change that? How do I, move that to be different, right? What do I need to do there? And maybe talk more or talk less or listen more. Oftentimes we don't listen enough to actually acquire the information needed so that we can speak to it, because we're too busy thinking. And the thinking and the talking prevents us from listening. So listening is very important, because listening allows us to acknowledge things that we were never really present to acknowledging because we never stopped to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so listening is a very important quality that a CEO must, just like integrity, just like acknowledgement, must, cultivate, because when we really listen powerfully, we change everything. And that is a very hard concept for people to get. When we listen, I'm going to repeat it again. When we listen powerfully, we have the capacity to transform something. And it's not just in the speaking of something, but it's actually in the listening. Mm-hmm. Because it's in the listening that we hear. And not only that, it becomes a two-way street. When you're actually powerfully listening to someone, the other person gets that you've actually listened and heard them. And that makes a huge impact in the relationship that you build, So that's another biggie, is the listening aspect.
Yeah, I'm practicing. I'm doing working like a 7-day listening challenge right now myself. So every day there's a different focus, right? But like the one today is literally it's called talk less, be listening or talking 80%, or sorry, listening 80, talking 20%. Right. But one of the other ones, it's just like wait 3 seconds after somebody says something, just to let it digest and really come in to our being. Even longer, it could even be like an uncomfortable pause, right? Like more than 3 seconds. And just and see if they have anything else to share, right? Like often we jump in so quick to respond that they actually had something else on their heart to share.
And a very good technique that I found that really works is when you listen and then you want to recreate what you've heard in your own words, so that you tell the other person, is that what I heard you say? And then the person can acknowledge it. But in that process, they really get that you were listening, because now you recreated in your own words what you heard from them. So that creates a really powerful, bond, and it creates trust, which is important. If you're not trusted as CEO, you can't really make a difference. You can't really impact your employees. You can't really have them be motivated by what you say, because there's no trust. So it's all part of, building trust with people.
Okay. Love it.